There's no right way, or any wrong way, to be non-binary. In my last video about coming out and exploring my non-binary identity, I mentioned a comic strip, which really succinctly and quite humorously laid out the fact that there is only one rule for being non-binary, and that is that you do what you want. There are expectations, I think, perhaps by people, cis people, people who don't know much about being non-binary, that we exist as this androgynous, impossible to define, impossible to gender thing. And this is very confusing, and I understand, and I myself, going on this journey, have been caught up in all of this because I do think a lot about societal expectations, because don't we all think about societal expectations and what we should do and how we should do it and what is right and what is wrong. And I continue to think about this all the time. I always have questions, and I'm always trying to answer questions. I was recently in a conversation with someone whose partner came out as non-binary, and this person kind of bombarded me with questions about non-binary identity, trying to understand her partner better and try to understand the culture better, I guess. And it was very, very difficult. I felt a lot of responsibility, and I have these same questions all the time, and I get confused all the time, and what I have to keep reminding myself is the simple truth that there is no right way to be non-binary. Non-binary people are all, I guess, assigned male at birth or assigned female at birth. And that means that we're often going to get misgendered automatically because that's how our society works. I don't really blame anyone for that. The only thing I would blame someone for is if they do not respect our gender identity and what we want and what we prefer, because we're not asking a lot. This is our bodies, our minds, etc., etc. That means that every non-binary person is unique in what they want and how they feel good and comfortable in their own body and in their own mind, in their society, in their family, amongst their friends, whatever. We all have different expectations. Two of my best friends in the entire world are also non-binary, and all three of us feel very, very differently about what that actually means. And I think this is part of the wonderful fluidity and freedom of the non-binary identity, is that it means something different to every single person. And something that I sometimes worry about is some kind of invisible non-binary police force that will come for me if I do things a little bit wrong. And I think that probably comes from the fact that I've been policed in the past. I've been told the right or wrong way to be a gamer or an anime fan or even a reader of books. You get told by people who think they know everything how things should be done. And so as a non-binary person, I often wonder if I'm going to be told, well, you don't sound very non-binary to me because of X, Y, or Z. And I refer back to that comic strip about how I do what I want. Really, all we're trying to do is feel comfortable in our own skin. So to go back to my two non-binary friends, they both feel a little bit different about what non-binary means to them. One of these two friends is becoming more and more comfortable and happy and gender euphoric about they-them pronouns. They are more and more moving towards the idea that they-them is the right identity for them. And I applaud this. I think it's wonderful. The other friend has remarked about how they wish that there were no pronouns, that we could somehow avoid pronouns altogether. But that's not how the English language works, unfortunately. For me, I'm happy with any and all pronouns. I mentioned this in my last video. And to bring this back around to the idea that there is a right or a wrong way to be non-binary, this was kind of a question I had. I've seen this brought up on Twitter, I've seen it in YouTube videos, I've seen it in discussions. All I know is that he and she do not set me off in any way. Not in the way that being called a man, a boy, a lad, those very, very male-centric terms, they very much set me off. Pronouns, I just don't mind the fuss of it. It doesn't upset me in any way. When I am specifically called a man, it bugs me, because I am not a man. I am a person. And this is something that I have done a lot of thinking about, and in any capacity whenever I describe myself in the third person, like if I was to write a bio, because I'm a writer, that kind of thing, I do always describe myself as a person. I put a comment in a YouTube video just yesterday that said I am a person of my word, because I would never describe myself as a man of my word, because I am not a man. These are the things that I think about. Not pronouns. And I don't mind he and him, partly because that means I don't have to be awkward, and partly because I really don't. But I am triggered by male, man, boy, lad, bloke. Luckily, bloke is usually saved for very masculine people, so I don't think I've ever been called a bloke. The point is, I'm a person, I'm a human, and that's it. And if you are a non-binary person watching this and you're trying to figure out the rules and you're wondering what is right and what is wrong and you're feeling a little bit insecure because we all feel insecure, then just know that your pronouns are really up to you. And I think they, them is the one that I am most comfortable with if you ask me to choose, but it really doesn't matter to me. At least not right now. This might change. And I said that in my last video. Like 6 months from now, I'm making this huge video about how, no, I am they and them and don't ever call me anything different. But I can't be doing with the fuss at the very least. And that should be okay. It should be okay that I don't want the fuss. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about when it comes to the rules and how there aren't any is aesthetics. I recently discovered a YouTube channel called Curio, which is run by a non-binary person called Sophie, and they have inspired me in a massive, massive way. In my last video I mentioned Jim Sterling, a video games pundit who I've been a fan of for 10 years. And how they were inspired to come out as non-binary in part, or at least how they came out as non-binary, by Curio. And so I looked up Curio, and Curio's channel is all about video games and Marxist communist politics and being non-binary. And I love all three of those things, so I was very excited to check out their channel, and I am slowly working my way all the way through it. In their video on specifically being non-binary, they talk about their own journey, and they do it in a much, much prettier way, as a piece of sort of performance poetry, much prettier than what I'm doing here or what I did in my last video. But they talked about baldness. They talk about how they have been going bald since they were a teenager, and this is something that you just kind of have to make your peace with. You can't really control it. But it's interesting how we only feel shame about baldness because it is a societal expectation, it is a trope, it is something that we learn to be ashamed of, and it's hard to be objective about it. Is baldness something that you'd feel ashamed of unless you were taught to be ashamed of it? Now, I'm not bald, I'm not going bald, I don't think I'm going to go bald, and I'm very glad about that because I do love my hair. I've been growing my hair out now for a year and I adore it. And I've spent my entire life going from really long hair to really short hair, and I go back and forth. And I don't think I'm ever going to cut my hair again because it takes way too long to grow it out. So aesthetics are an interesting point because I was watching Curio's videos and I was struck by the fact that they have a very masculine voice. They are balding, but they are dressed in far more feminine clothes, and as their videos have gone on, they have dressed in increasingly more feminine clothes, and I found myself doing that too. I wear makeup quite often now. I am always painting my nails. I love painting my nails, and I'm always dressing in more and more feminine clothes, or at least camper and more colourful clothes. And I think everything I own pretty much is from the women's section now. I got rid of everything else. I have a blazer in the closet that I don't think I'm ever going to have the guts to wear again because it just doesn't feel right. So this has been a wonderful move for me. But my feminine aesthetics, my androgynous aesthetics, they only go so far. And I will always be mistaken for a man. This will always happen, and I will always have to be okay with it. And to a certain extent, I'll always let things go, especially pronouns. As I've said, I can't see myself worrying about that. But watching Curio's channel has helped me so much. I can't say enough how grateful I am to Sophie and the journey that they've gone on and how that has enlightened me. Because I came to realize more and more that there are no rules. Just because your voice sounds a certain way, just because you look a certain way, or dress a certain way, it really doesn't mean anything. You are non-binary because you do not feel comfortable or you do not feel correct in a specific part of those two male-female gender binaries. There is an intense amount of freedom and weightlessness that comes from existing as a non-binary person and admitting that to yourself and enjoying it. It is gender euphoria, and ultimately that's what we're trying to achieve, is gender euphoria. Gender dysphoria comes from a feeling that you do not feel correct in your skin, in the body that you inhabit. And this is because I've had gender dysphoria for so long. I've had to wonder time and time again if I am trans and if I want to come out as trans, and it's not the case. That's why it's important that non-binariness exists, because it gives language and existence and a culture to a thing that we have all felt. If you are someone who experiences gender dysphoria, but you are not transgender, there must be a space for you. That's what the non-binary gender identity is. If you're someone who gets triggered by the idea of being called a man or a boy, or if you were assigned female at birth and you don't want to be called a woman or a girl, then you're non-binary, probably. If you are happy with your sexuality, you're happy with your genitals, you're happy with your physical form, but your gender expression, both in terms of language and aesthetics, does not match the gender that you were born into and the gender you were ascribed at birth by family, society, etc., then this is what you're looking for. So as someone who is masculine in some ways, feminine in others, doesn't really give a shit either way, I feel very comfortable and very seen and very included within a non-binary gender group. I think I'm mixing my words up a little bit here. I didn't script this in any way, and in fact I already filmed it once and deleted it because I was rambling, but I just wanted to reiterate time and again with a few examples and a few things that I've learned and who has taught me those things, that there are no rules, that there is no right or wrong way to be non-binary. If you're worried about not being androgynous enough, you shouldn't. And I definitely feel a sense of jealousy and inspiration, to look at it more positively, when I see non-binary people who are entirely and completely androgynous. You know, I see a non-binary person who so embodies the idea of gender fluidity, of existing outside the gender binary space. I do look at them and I think, how do I get there? But it just doesn't matter though. It doesn't matter if I don't meet that, ever. What matters is that you feel comfortable within your gender identity. It's all that matters. It's all that matters. If you're the most masculine looking person and you have a big, thick, bushy beard and a Viking body, and you tell people you're non-binary, you are fucking non-binary. And if you have massive tits and long, luscious blonde locks, and you go out in heels and a sundress, and you tell people you are non-binary, you are non-binary. That's it. Nothing else has to be said. And this is something I'm telling myself as much as I'm telling anyone else. Being non-binary simply means that you feel comfortable in your skin, that you feel comfortable with your gender identity. I am not cisgender. I am not transgender. I am non-binary. And that feels amazing. You can call me he, you can call me she, you can call me they. Do not call me a man. I'm a person. And that's all I ask. It's not a lot. Cool. Alright, my next video is going to be about books. Subscribe for books.